There's an old saying that the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. Therefore, just because you didn't start improving your life a long time ago, when you were younger, it doesn't mean you can't start now. But where should you start? According to the Stoics, there are 7 Stoic lessons men learn too late. Let's begin. Lesson number 1. Understand the true value of time. Seneca once wrote, "It is not that we have a short space of time, but that we waste much of it. Life is long enough, and it has been given in sufficiently generous measure to allow the accomplishment of the very greatest things, if the whole of it is well invested." The essence of this saying from Seneca's essay on the shortness of life is that it's never too late for you to improve the quality of your life and do something worthwhile. But at the same time, it's always too late if you don't invest your time wisely. We often find ourselves stuck between the rat race anxiety and trivial distractions, which make it difficult to even pause for a second to consider the present. The modern man is trapped in a rat race of meaningless work that sucks the vitality from the soul, only to squander what's left of that vitality in even more meaningless distractions, like constant social media scrolling with no purpose other than to numb the mind. Only a few pause for a moment to realize the futility of this modern way of living and strive for better alternatives. What you often realize is that time is fleeting away when you're caught up in that loop, but at the same time, there's plenty of time, maybe too much of it. The trick is to know how to invest it well, and the best investment of time is far away from wasting it in a rat race and hedonistic pursuits. So the first lesson is to focus on the present moment. By doing so, you'll realize that you always have the option to make the best of every moment in your life. And that's how you figure out how to invest your time wisely. It could be as simple as learning an online course instead of watching Netflix, or exercising instead of scrolling social media mindlessly. It's ultimately up to you to choose how to invest your present moment to serve your future self and be proud. Lesson number 2. Realize the impermanence of material wealth. Marcus Aurelius, a man who practically owned the whole classical world when he was an emperor, once wrote, "Enjoy material comforts if they're there, but don't miss them if they aren't there. Treat the things you don't have as non-existent. Look at what you have and think how much you'd want them if you didn't have them." As you move forward in life, you may come across people who seem to measure their worth by the possessions they accumulate. Remember, the value of a person is not determined by their wealth, but by their character and actions. A true Stoic man transcends that mentality of measuring self-worth by possessions. True worth comes from character, not from expensive watches, sports cars, or jewelry. A high-value man must first cultivate internal virtue. External wealth is only complementary. As a matter of fact, too much attachment to material possessions can only weaken the character of a man. You become dependent on external things to seek self-worth, which is far away from what Stoicism is teaching us. Marcus Aurelius was a great emperor, not because he ruled the Roman Empire and owned everything a man could imagine, but because of his virtuous character and wisdom. So don't be too attached to things. As Tyler Durden from Fight Club says, the things you own end up owning you. High-value men are not born to consume. They are born to provide value in one way or another. Consumerism and material possessions aren't the answer to the void inside a man's heart. It's striving to provide value and virtue that fills that void. Lesson number 3. Accept what you cannot control. Now, let me tell you an anecdote about the dichotomy of control. Mark, a young executive, had meticulously planned his morning. He had a crucial presentation to deliver at work, and nothing could disrupt his perfect agenda. As he rushed toward the subway station, A sudden downpour drenched him from head to toe, ruining his expensive suit. Frustration welled up within Mark, and he muttered curses at the uncooperative weather as his anxiety started to fill his mind with all kinds of bad scenarios. But then, he recalled a quote from Epictetus that he read a while ago. "Some things are within our power, while others are not. Within our power are opinion, motivation, desire, aversion, and, in a word, whatever is of our own doing. Not within our power are our body, our property, reputation, office, and, in a word, whatever is not of our own doing." While Mark couldn't control the rain, he could control his response to it. That simple realization was enough to uplift him. Mark chuckled at the absurdity of the situation and continued on his way, arriving at the office looking more like a drowned rat than a corporate headshot. His colleagues laughed, which didn't bother him at all, and he delivered the presentation with a stoic smile. In the end, Mark's willingness to accept what he couldn't control and adapt to the situation not only lightened his day, but also earned him the respect of his colleagues. As Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." So keep that in mind all the time, and see how you become unhinged by external things that seem like obstacles. Lesson number 4. The pursuit of virtue over pleasure. The naive assumption that instant gratification and avoidance of pain is the most important thing in life plagues the modern world. And unfortunately, there are many industries, especially the adult industry, that are centered around exploiting people who assume that. Seeking momentary pleasure to kill pain is essentially what leads to many of the addictions of the modern world. Hedonism makes you crave more pleasure in a higher dose, and the way it does that is by making the pain even worse. And that's how people are trapped in the circle of pain and pleasure. More pain requires more pleasure, and so on and so on. When you're stuck in that loop, you become a slave to selfish pleasure that cannot be satisfied. The secret is to find balance, which the Stoics call the virtue of temperance, one of the 7 classical virtues. Satisfaction comes from living a virtuous life. Marcus Aurelius writes in his Meditations, "Stop allowing your mind to be a slave, to be jerked about by selfish impulses, to kick against fate and the present, and to mistrust the future." He also writes, "And as long as nothing satisfies you, you yourself cannot satisfy others." So if you're striving to be a valuable member of your community, seeking fleeting pleasure isn't the way to go. Lesson number 5. The danger of relying on external validation. The danger of relying on external validation is a strong theme in the Stoic philosophy, as highlighted by Seneca's wisdom. Seneca warned against the habit of constantly seeking approval and validation from others. He says, "Let not your happiness depend on a thing you may lose." According to Stoic principles, reliance on external sources of validation can lead to a fragile sense of self-worth, as it places one's happiness and self-esteem in the hands of others, whose opinions and judgments are often fickle and unpredictable. Instead, Stoicism emphasizes the cultivation of inner validation and self-worth. Stoicism encourages you to derive your sense of value and contentment from within, rooted in your own principles, actions, and moral compass, rather than being at the mercy of external validation. This shift towards self-reliance and inner strength is a fundamental aspect of the Stoic journey towards leading a virtuous life. Lesson number 6. Resilience in the face of adversity. One Stoic who's known for a high degree of resilience and adherence to Stoic principles is Marcus Aurelius. His meditations provide a glimpse into his life and mindset. Marcus Aurelius faced numerous challenges during his rule, including wars, political intrigue, and the Antonine Plague. Here's a true story that exemplifies his resilience and Stoic philosophy. During his reign, the Roman Empire faced the Antonine Plague, a deadly pandemic that swept through the empire, causing immense suffering and death. Despite being in a position of immense power and privilege, Marcus Aurelius didn't exempt himself from the hardships faced by his people. He chose to stay in Rome and assist in caring for the sick and dying, even though he could have retreated to a safer location where he could avoid catching the plague. Another example of adherence to Stoic principles is Epictetus, who was enslaved during his early life. Here's a true story from his life that illustrates his remarkable resilience. Epictetus was born a slave. He lived a life of servitude and endured many hardships. Despite his enslaved status, he demonstrated an unwavering commitment to Stoic philosophy and inner resilience. One day, while he was still a slave, his master became frustrated with him and began to twist his leg. Epictetus, who would later be known for his calm and rational demeanor, responded to this painful ordeal with remarkable poise. He said to his master, "You will break my leg if you keep on doing that." His response demonstrated his acceptance of the situation and his focus on what he could control, his own reaction. Epictetus eventually gained his freedom and went on to become a renowned Stoic philosopher, teaching his philosophy to students and authoring the Enchiridion and the Discourses, which were major influences on Marcus Aurelius. In the modern world, many young men do not face the extreme external hardships that some ancient Stoics experienced. However, the mental health crisis affecting young men can often be attributed to a different type of adversity: the internal struggles and pressures of modern life. Unlike the Stoics of antiquity who confronted external challenges such as wars, famines, and diseases, today's young men grapple with the complexities of a rapidly changing and interconnected world. Social pressures, economic uncertainties, academic or career-related stress, and the constant bombardment of information and comparison on social media create their own set of internal hardships. The Stoic practice of negative visualization can be a valuable tool in addressing these internal challenges. While it may seem counterintuitive to deliberately imagine negative scenarios, this practice allows individuals to develop resilience, perspective, and gratitude for the present moment. By contemplating potential adversities, you can better prepare yourself mentally and emotionally to navigate adversities. Lesson number 7. Contemplate the reality of mortality. Memento mori is a Latin phrase that means, remember that you will die. It is a Stoic practice of reflecting on mortality as a way to live a more meaningful life. When you live life as if you're going to die at any moment, you cultivate gratitude for the gift of life. We often avoid talking about death in the modern world, unless it's about people in the news or fictional characters, which is not a healthy attitude towards something that is an inevitability. It's like trying to hide the sun behind a transparent sheet of glass. Your attitude towards death has to be Stoic. Seneca wrote that we die every day. He meant that we should not take life for granted and that we should make the most of every day. Marcus Aurelius also wrote about the cycle of life. He said that all things are born, grow old, and die, and that this is a natural process. He also said that we should not fear death, but should fear not to live life properly. The Stoic practice of memento mori can help you live a more mindful and intentional life. When we remember that we are mortal, we are less likely to take things for granted and more likely to focus on what is truly important, making the best of the little time we have as living, rational creatures. Whether you believe in an afterlife or don't, and the fact that you are alive today and might die before the day ends or tomorrow should motivate you instead of crippling you. It should motivate you to take the opportunity to live a virtuous life, a life that's worth every second of it. We are also less likely to be afraid of death and more likely to accept it as a natural part of life with such a Stoic attitude. So, those are the 7 lessons that make you a true Stoic. It's up to you now to adopt them into your life and see how it improves. If you found this video valuable, consider subscribing to the channel and activate the bell button if you don't want to miss the next video.